At this point in time, I would like to thank Bravo von Mueller, for without his generous contribution, this video would not be possible. Our story today is us versus them. The way they see it, the apple does not fall very far from the tree. If your dad was part of the corporate club, well, then that settles it. You're part of the club. You're in the matrix. But if your dad was a coal miner, well, that settles it also. You are destined to be a slave. Now don't fight it, boy. Just put your head down to the grindstone. It's us versus them. That is our story today. Well, first off, we must understand that the Council on Foreign Relations is a tool. Yes, a powerful tool. In the way that a gun is a tool to a police officer. Or a battleship is a tool to a Navy captain. Or even an ICBM nuclear missile, how that is a tool to the Pentagon, to Washington, D.C. Beltway. Okay? All these tools have one thing in common. A human or a group of humans maintain control over that tool, or at least we trained to strive for that. An organization can be a very, very effective control mechanism on humans. Case in point. Okay, you've got all these corporations you just see here. Now, these corporations are corporations that matter. They have intel on your private data. They control things in your life. If there's a corporation out there that you must have to deal with, well, the Council on Foreign Relations wants them to be a member. This is all an elite matrix, an elite club. Now, we know all this, but today we're going to set out an example to prove what we already know in our gut. Okay, case in point, we have a gentleman named Patrick Byrne, and he's in the news today. Now, Patrick Byrne is a part of the Overstock Corporation. Now, that's a corporation that has a lot of intel on your private data. So that's why, and he's part of the club. We've already established that. Yes, he's part of the clique. He was born in the elite club. He was groomed to be part of the matrix. Make no mistake about it. This is us versus them. And if you try to infiltrate this elite money matrix, if you try to infiltrate this club, you will be reported to the appropriate authorities. That's why we're talking about this today. The only reason why I took the time to make this video is now we have proof right from their mouth that if you try to get involved with these people, if you try to infiltrate them, they have a number to call. If you've been around a bunch of rich people, you understand that deep down inside, they're not really confident. These rich people who are in the club, they know how they got there. They got there because Daddy was part of the club. Now, one way down the line, maybe Grandpa or Daddy, one of them might have been an extremely clever, good person. But that was a long, long time ago. The problem with this type of matrix is if Daddy was part of the club, and nepotism. This nepotism is wrong because all of these rich people today, they don't have the confidence because they know they don't deserve to be where they are. They're there because Daddy got them there. Daddy's money got them there. Warren Buffett helped them there. So they don't really have the confidence that somebody who had to pull themselves up from the bootstraps has. Okay, so that's why you have to have a tool like the Council on Foreign Relations. This helps these little rich kids who are thrown into the matrix. It helps them deal with this matrix. Oh, yes, if you have any suspicious under person, so one of the peasants, if you have a suspicious peasant try to infiltrate the matrix, you will call this number. I mean, you would think, yeah, I can't make this shit up. Of course I cannot make this shit up. Nobody would believe it. The only reason why we're talking about it is because one of the people in the club has admitted to it. Okay, at this moment, why don't we talk about Patrick Byrne's father, Jack Burns? He was a legend in the insurance business, and we know that insurance is part of the matrix. They have all the information on you. And maybe Jack was a clever person. I have no doubt that he was a clever person. And it says here that he sees nothing but trouble in the U.S. credit crisis. It's one thing, once these old guys who are in the matrix, once they get old, sometimes they start to feel guilty about how they made all those millions of dollars in this fake economy. And then sometimes they actually let the truth spill out. I mean, if you talk to these old guys, 70, 80 years old, I mean, you can't really hurt them anymore. What are you going to do? Kill them? The club, what's the 666 club going to do to them? Kill them? 75, 80 years old? They don't care anymore. So most people don't listen to the old men. But what I'm trying to say here, I guess, is I'm not here to say that Jack Burns or Patrick Burns are bad people. I'm not here to say that. I'm here to say that they're part of the elite matrix, okay? And even though they may not be part of the 666 gang, they work hand in hand with the 666 gang. They all know that you work together in this matrix of us versus them. And I'm going to tell you who we are. Now, okay, I'll tell you who we are right now. We are a number. You are a number. You are a piece of live beef to be run through the slaughterhouse. You are to be tagged, bagged, and dragged through the matrix, draining you of every cent that they allow you to claw away. You will be drained of every ounce of energy, having to slave for the corporation that only knows you as a number, a commodity, a throwaway day laborer, a peasant with no rights. You keep your mouth shut and you pay the high prices to the company store. Sign on the dotted line for credit that they dole out, precisely giving you half of the wages needed to pay for the overpriced garbage that they sell you at the corporate company store, aka inflation. And if you open your mouth about how you are a debt slave, if you complain about being a debt slave, you will be banished from the corporate matrix. Little does the slave know that would be the best thing that ever happened to them. I would like to quickly tell a story when I used to be on the dice table at this grind joint in a casino. We didn't make much money. Sometimes we stood around all day. We didn't get a whole lot of action, but it was a job. I made minimum wage, a little bit of tips. And sometimes there was a wise guy from New York. He would come back to the crab table. He'd come down there. He was the shift boss, and he would joke. There was 4 of us on the table. He would joke, there's only one guy on this table that I would fire. And he would point at me. He kind of liked me, I guess. And he would point at me, I'll fire that guy because I like him. And when I fire him, he's going to go out and get a better job. He says, the rest of you guys, I'm going to keep you here and make you suffer. That kind of reminds me of the matrix that everybody's in. They're paying these exorbitant fees for colleges. They're debt slaves. They're in the matrix. They work for the corporation, a job they don't like. Little do they know that if they were fired from this matrix, it would probably be the best thing for them. Because I'll tell you why. It would force you to learn how to live on your own wits. You'd have to make it on your own. Okay, I'm going to show you the evidence. What inspired me to make this video today. Look right there where the little arrow is. Okay, the little arrow says they have a number. There's a number you call, and I called that number, okay? Because he has a security clearance, being part of the Council on Foreign Relations. We're now talking about Patrick Byrne. Being part of the Council on Foreign Relations, he has a number to call. If anybody tries to infiltrate this matrix, these clubs, remember, the CEOs of all these corporations, the politicians, the bankers, the heads of the military, these guys are all in the club. They live in houses that have gated communities, big fences. They have to be separated from the peasants. This is what inspired me to make this video today. Patrick Byrne is admitting that, yes, I've been directed. Because remember, they don't have a lot of confidence. These kids that were born in these rich families and they were pushed there and everything was given to them, they don't have a lot of confidence. Sometimes they don't have the brains. Patrick Byrne might be a nice fella. I have no doubt he's a nice guy. Probably has a nice family. But he has to be molded. That's what all that college was for. He was molded to fit the matrix. And if anybody tries to infiltrate that matrix, you call this number. Now, I will say this for the last time. These kids that are born into this matrix, okay, they've been miseducated in college. They've been miseducated. They're not really that smart. They could be good people, but they're not that smart. That's why Patrick Byrne is coming out. He said, yes, he was worried about his security clearance. So I called that number. What's it all about? There was that Russian girl. Remember that Russian model who tried to infiltrate everything? She was part of the KGB and she's part of the Russian intelligence community. What Patrick doesn't understand, that all the intelligence communities of the world work together. The KGB, the Mossad, the CIA, the FBI, they all work together. Military intelligence. That's why Patrick was confused, that the FBI didn't take him seriously, or the FBI didn't do this, or they didn't do that, because Patrick was born into this matrix. He didn't have to learn from the ground up, from the streets. He's got no streets intelligence, okay? He's still confused about that Russian model. You see, the intelligence community just gathers dirt on people. Think of Epstein. And you're part of the intelligence community until you're no longer needed. Now Epstein is a liability, and Epstein will be let go, but they all work together. They got evidence on Donald Trump. They got evidence on Hillary. They got evidence on anybody who is put in mainstream media. And that's how the matrix works. You don't get in front of the mainstream media unless they have intelligence on you. You don't become Donald Trump on TV. You don't become Hillary Clinton on TV unless they have intel on you. The intelligence community has you lock, stock, and barrel. Patrick Byrne is just naive. He doesn't know how it works. But he's given us a little piece of evidence about how the matrix works. Yes, I was born into the matrix. My daddy was an insurance legend. Went to the best schools. Yes, I was miseducated in the best schools, but I have all the money and you guys have nothing. I may not be very bright, but I have all the money and you guys have nothing. Okay? But he doesn't know how the intelligence communities works. He thinks he does because he's in the Council of Foreign Relations, but he's just a little on the naive side. He does understand more than most of us do. He knows that the system is going to break down. He knows that. He's actually bought gold and silver for himself. He's one of the elite to have bunkers. These elite, okay, they at least know that the system is fake. And they are creating bunkers out in the middle of nowhere because they are scared. When this house of cards comes falling down, they're going to be in a bunker with their gold and their water and their supplies, and all the peasants are going to have to fight it out. It's going to get ugly. At least they know that much. So I will leave you with this. If you take nothing else away from this video, remember this, that if you are a peasant, and you try to infiltrate the club, if you try to infiltrate these elite people, there's a number for these kids to call. I mean, the older guys in the 70s and 80s, they know how to handle you. But it's these younger generation that have been thrown into the good colleges, like Patrick Byrne, and he's been miseducated. He's a little naive. There's a number because there's an authority to handle something like that. You will be reported to the appropriate authorities. And of course, the authority is a tool of the corporation. And all the corporations that matter, remember, all the corporations that matter report to a higher authority, the Council on Foreign Relations, which has a pecking order. Okay? And now you can see how an elite matrix is created, all being funded by fiat currency. And of course, the Federal Reserve banking cartel is the leader of this group of central bankers for the last 80 years. Now, that's fallen apart. Why do you think why do you think the rich are creating bunkers out in the middle of nowhere, buying their gold and their supplies? Because after it's over 100 years now. The Federal Reserve was created 100 years ago. But the Federal Reserve banking cartel has been in control of the central banks for almost 80 years. Okay, and that's all crumbling. That's why they're creating bunkers. Okay, and I'll leave you with this. On a side note, if this fiat currency is destroyed, if you destroy the fiat currency, then the whole fake house of cards comes falling down. And of course, that's why he says he's bought $10 million worth of gold and silver, several thousand emergency preparation kits, complete with food rations to last 2,000 employees and their families for 30 to 60 days. I am the CEO. I have the food and the gold. You will look up to me. My daddy was an insurance man. He was a legend. Okay, yes. Yes, they have it all figured out. Us versus them.